I got a voicemail from my own number at 9:12 on a Tuesday night. The message was 14 seconds long. And the first thing my own voice said was, "Daniel, it's me. It's 3 hours from now. At 12:14, someone is going to buzz your apartment. Don't answer. The hallway light will go out first." And the message ended. I didn't move for a few seconds. I just stared at the phone, waiting for the screen to change or the number to turn into something else. It didn't. It was my number. The same number I'd had for almost 10 years. The voicemail was sitting in the regular visual voicemail list, with a timestamp of 9:12 p.m.
My name is Daniel Rusk. I was 35, living alone in a fourth-floor apartment where pipes clicked, elevators groaned, and the hallway light buzzed when it warmed up. I worked from home, so my phone was usually beside me. I also used it for short voice memos, which was why I knew the voice was mine. I had my pauses, my breathing, and the way I said my own name when I was tired. Still, I tried to explain it. The first thing I checked was the time. My phone said 9:12. So did my laptop. The microwave said 9:12, and the cheap wall clock above my desk was only a few seconds behind. I played the voicemail again. "Daniel, it's me. It's 3 hours from now." The recording sounded like it had been made in my apartment. In the background, I could hear the refrigerator motor and a faint elevator chime from the hallway. Those were sounds I heard every day.
I took a screenshot, saved the voicemail to my phone, and emailed the audio file to myself. Then I sent it to my friend Marcus with a message that said, "Does this sound like me?" I didn't mention the 3 hours from now part. I felt stupid even typing it. After that, I searched for normal explanations. Caller ID can be spoofed. A voicemail can be delayed. Visual voicemail can fail to refresh properly. Someone could have copied an old recording of me. Maybe one of my accounts had been accessed. The number didn't prove anything. At 9:41, the hallway light outside my apartment flickered twice. I was sitting at my desk when it happened. The light under my front door went bright, dark, bright, and then disappeared completely. The apartment became very quiet. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The elevator was closed. Nobody was standing near the stairs.
A second later, my phone vibrated on the desk. Another voicemail. Same number. I opened it, and my voice said, "You sent the first one to Marcus. Don't call the number back. You'll hear yourself answer." The message was only 9 seconds long. I hadn't said Marcus's name out loud. I hadn't texted it. The message was already waiting before I had a chance to tell myself that maybe the phone had somehow read what I was doing. I called Marcus anyway. He listened to the first voicemail while I stayed on the line. Then he said, "That's you." I asked if it sounded edited. "No, it sounds like you're trying not to wake somebody up." I was alone.
I called my carrier through the customer service number on my bill. The representative had me check my voicemail PIN, my call forwarding settings, and the visual voicemail inbox. I turned off Wi-Fi calling, restarted the phone, and refreshed the inbox. The message was still there. The representative said the voicemail existed in the carrier mailbox, but she couldn't see a normal incoming call that explained where it came from. She told me to change my PIN and watch for unusual activity. I asked if someone could leave a voicemail from my own number. She said caller ID could be manipulated, but the carrier would need more information. It was a reasonable answer. It just didn't help.
"Daniel, it's me. It's 3 hours from now." Then I played both recordings side by side on my laptop. My voice matched. The room didn't. In my new recording, the refrigerator was running. In the voicemail, the refrigerator was silent. But the elevator chime was there. Then I noticed something else. Under the voice, there was a faint clicking sound, like a phone being tapped against a wooden table. I listened to the first message over and over. At 10:38, the third voicemail arrived. This one said, "You're going to leave. Don't. The sound you hear on the stairs is not someone coming up." I was standing beside the front door when I heard it. I hadn't decided to leave until that moment, but I had started thinking about it. I had put my shoes on. My keys were in my hand.
I unplugged the phone and powered it off. Then I walked into the stairwell. The building was quiet. I could hear the elevator motor below me and the faint buzz of the light above the landing. I took 3 steps down. A footstep sounded above me. I stopped. It was a single step on the concrete stairs, heavy enough to hear, but not heavy enough to tell me anything about the person making it. I looked up. The stairwell was empty. My phone was still powered off in my hand. I turned it back on. The 3rd voicemail was waiting. That was when I stopped thinking of the messages as warnings. They knew what I was about to do, or they were making me do it.
I went back upstairs, took my jacket, and left the building anyway. I got into my car across the street and put the phone in the glove compartment. I wanted distance from the apartment, and I wanted to see if anything happened without me there. At 11:58, the building buzzer sounded once. I heard it through the car window. The hallway light in my apartment went dark at the same time. Nobody entered the building. I could see the front door from where I was parked. The street was empty except for a bus moving through the next intersection. I almost convinced myself the first voicemail had been a coincidence. Then the phone inside the glove compartment started vibrating. The screen lit up by itself. A new voicemail was playing before I touched it. There was a few seconds of breathing. Mine, close to the microphone. Then my voice said my name. Daniel. I looked up at my apartment window. The front door of my apartment looked slightly open. I knew I had locked it before leaving. I remembered pulling on the handle twice. The voicemail continued. Don't turn on the bedroom light. The message ended with a soft wooden sound, like somebody placing a phone on a table. The time on the dashboard read 12:14. I stayed in the car for almost a minute, then crossed the street. I didn't want to go inside, but I couldn't leave the phone there. The breathing sounded like whoever recorded it had just walked through my apartment. I stood outside my door and listened. There was no movement inside. No footsteps. No television. Nothing. My phone vibrated again. Another voicemail from my number. Then my voice said, "I'm back inside now. Don't turn on the bedroom light." I was still standing in the hallway. I hadn't opened the door. I hadn't gone inside.
I left the building and spent the rest of the night at Marcus's apartment. I didn't sleep. I kept the phone on the kitchen table between us, powered off with the battery removed as soon as I got home the next morning. The messages were still there when I turned it back on. All of them. The carrier copy, the saved file, the email attachment, the version on my laptop. They were identical.
That morning, I listened to the first voicemail again with headphones. I was looking for edits, anything that would prove the voice wasn't really mine. Instead, I heard something I hadn't noticed before. Right at the beginning of the recording, before my voice spoke, there was a notification chime. My notification chime. The exact sound my phone made when a new voicemail arrived. Then came the small wooden click. The sound of a phone being set down. Then my voice said, "Daniel, it's me. It's 3 hours from now." I replayed those first 2 seconds for a long time. The phone had not been on a wooden table when I received the message. It had been beside my laptop on a glass desk. And 3 hours later, when the final voicemail played in my car,
My phone was in the glove compartment. So the first recording wasn't just a message from the future. It contained the sound of the phone receiving the message that would eventually become the first recording. I still don't know who carried it into my bedroom, or whether the voice was actually trying to warn me. But there's one detail I can't get past. A few weeks later, I moved out. I gave the phone to the carrier for testing, and they found nothing wrong with it. Before I left the apartment for the last time, I stood outside the bedroom and listened to the empty room. My phone was in my hand. The battery was out. Then I heard the voicemail notification chime from inside the bedroom. A second later, something made the soft wooden click of a phone being placed on the table. And from the dark room, in my own voice, someone said,
"Daniel, it's me."
The first time I saw the man, he was already halfway across my backyard. The trail camera showed him entering from the trees at 2:13 in the morning. I watched the clip 3 times because I expected the next recording to show him leaving. There wasn't one. The camera worked in short motion-triggered clips, 10 or 12 seconds long. It recorded a raccoon walking into the yard and back into the woods. It recorded deer doing the same thing. But the man only moved one way, toward my house. My name is Ethan Vale. I was 37 and had lived alone in that house. It sat beside a small neighborhood where the backyards ended at a line of trees. There was a shed, a chain-link fence, and a gravel path through the woods. I bought a trail camera because something kept getting into my trash. I assumed it was raccoons. The lid was always open, and once I found a torn bag near the tree line. So I bought a cheap, no-glow camera, strapped it to a cedar post, and aimed it toward the back property.
For 4 nights, it recorded a raccoon, deer, a fox, and my neighbor's cat. The time was correct, the battery was fine, and the files were in order. Then, on the 5th night, it recorded a person. The video was black and white, with infrared glare. The figure appeared near the trees, in a dark jacket, heavy boots, and something pale over its face. The person walked slowly toward the house. The clip ended near the shed. The next file showed leaves moving in the wind. After that, nothing until morning. I didn't panic. I thought someone was using the utility easement behind my fence as a shortcut to the road. The next morning, I walked the property. The fence, shed, and back door were intact, but I found no clear footprints. There was a low gap behind the shed where the fence met the retaining wall. Someone could have used it without being seen. That was my explanation. The next night, the person appeared again at 2:12 a.m. Same dark jacket, same slow walk. The figure crossed the yard, stopped beneath the camera, and tilted its head upward. Then it continued toward the house. Again, there was no recording of it leaving. I told myself the camera had missed the exit. Trail cameras aren't security systems. They have blind spots and delays between triggers. Someone could have moved behind the shed without being recorded. The battery was down to 38%, which gave me something technical to blame. So I replaced the batteries with fresh lithium ones, formatted a new SD card, cleared the branches around the camera, and raised it higher on the cedar post. Then I tested it myself. I walked from the woods to the house. The camera recorded me. I walked from the house back toward the woods. It recorded that too. I crossed behind the shed and through the low gap. Each time, the camera showed which direction I was moving. The system worked normally. That night, the person came back. 2:14 a.m. This time, the angle was better. I could see the boots, but they weren't muddy, even though the ground was wet. I enlarged the video until the picture broke into gray squares. There was no identifying detail, only the walk. Slow,
uneven, familiar in a way I couldn't explain. My neighbor Lena said she'd seen someone near the woods once or twice, probably using the easement. That made me feel better. If she had noticed him too, then I had a normal problem. A trespasser. I bought a second camera and placed it near the shed, aimed across the gap the first camera couldn't see. I also installed a motion light above the kitchen door. The next morning, both cameras had footage. Camera 1 showed the figure near the trees at 2:13. Camera 2 showed the same figure closer to the house at 2:13. Neither camera showed the person walking away. The timestamps were only seconds apart. The batteries were full, the cards were new, and nothing blocked either lens. I watched the clips side by side, expecting to see the person move between them. I never did. The first clip ended with the figure near the fence. The second began with the figure already on the house side of the shed. There should have been a few seconds of movement between them. There won't.
That was when I called the police non-emergency line. I didn't mention ghosts. I told the dispatcher I had video of someone repeatedly walking onto my property at night and might be checking the house. An officer came by that afternoon. He watched the clearest clip on my laptop and asked whether the person was outside right then. I said no. He asked if anything had been stolen or damaged. I said no. He told me not to confront anyone in the woods and suggested better lighting and locked doors. Before he left, he watched the clip again. Then he said, "The camera shows where the person is. It doesn't show where they came from." It sounded obvious at the time.
That night, I locked the back door in the shed. I pulled the curtains in the kitchen and kept my bedroom window open just enough to see the rear yard. At 2:11, the motion light came on. I sat up in bed and looked outside. There was nobody in the yard. At 2:13, both trail cameras started recording. I checked the feeds on my phone. On the screens, the figure was walking toward the house. Outside my window, the yard was empty. I looked from the phone to the yard. The figure moved slowly across the footage, its pale face covering bright under infrared. Outside, nothing moved. At 2:15, the handle on the back door moved once. Not violently, just a small, deliberate turn. I didn't go downstairs. I called the police again and stayed in my bedroom until the sun came up. There was no forced entry. The back door was still locked. The officer who came out later said the handle could have moved because of pressure on the latch, or because somebody had tested it from outside. He couldn't explain the footage, but he couldn't say it proved anything either.
I almost deleted the files. Instead, I watched the first human clip again, frame by frame. That was when I noticed the glass in the rear mudroom door. The door was visible at the far end of the yard, just beyond the edge of the frame. In one of the earliest frames, before the figure clearly appeared near the trees, there was a dark shape reflected in the glass. At first, I thought it was a branch. Then I noticed the pale area where the face covering should have been. The reflection wasn't in the woods. It was on the house side of the glass. I checked the clip again. The figure's feet were hard to read. The shoulders were turned slightly toward the camera, not away from it. What I had been calling an entrance might have been the person moving out from the house toward the yard. That explanation should have made me feel better. It didn't.
I placed a small indoor camera on a shelf in the mudroom, facing the back door and the coat hooks. I wanted to know if somebody was hiding inside the house. The next night, I sat in my car across the street with the camera feed open on my phone. At 2:12, the indoor camera activated. The mudroom was empty. The back door was closed. Nothing moved for several seconds. Then, the figure was there. It stood beside the coat hooks, already inside the room. It hadn't opened the door or come through the hallway. It was simply standing there in the dark jacket and pale face covering. The figure turned slightly toward the indoor camera,
At 2:13, the exterior camera recorded that same figure crossing the yard toward the house. I compared the timestamps. The indoor recording came first. The back door was still locked. I was still sitting in my car. And the person the outdoor camera showed entering my property had already been inside the house for at least a minute.
I never went back inside that night. I waited until morning, packed a bag, moved across town. I kept the camera files on a hard drive, but didn't watch them for a long time. And then a few months later, I checked the outdoor camera one more time. The newest clip was from 2:13 in the morning. This time the figure wasn't walking toward the house. It was walking away from it, toward the trees. The indoor camera showed the mudroom empty. And for the first time, I thought I might have finally seen the person leaving. Then the figure reached the edge of the yard, and the exterior clip ended. A second later, the indoor camera activated again. And the reflection of the mudroom glass, someone was standing behind the camera. The same dark jacket, pale face covering, and posture. I was watching from my apartment across town. The back door had been locked for months. I still don't know how that person got into the mudroom, and whether the cameras recorded movement through a place the footage never showed. But the officer was right. The camera only showed where the person was. It never showed where they came from. The part I can't stop thinking about is this. If the figure was already inside the house before the camera recorded it entering the yard, then the first time I saw it on the trail camera may not have been the beginning. It may have been the first time it decided to leave.
The first time I heard it, I thought somebody upstairs had dropped a dresser. It was 3:17 in the morning. I was lying in bed in my apartment on the third floor of the Riverton Arms when something heavy dragged across the ceiling above me. Not a bang, not a pipe knocking. A long, slow scrape, like a wooden piece of furniture being pulled across the floor. Then it stopped. A few seconds later, there were 3 dull impacts. 1, 2, 3. I checked my phone. 3:17. The apartment above mine had been empty for 6 years. I knew that because the windows upstairs were always covered by the same crooked blinds. Nobody ever came in or out. The unit wasn't listed, and whenever somebody moved into the building, the manager would say the 4th floor apartment was unavailable. I assumed it was being renovated. The Riverton Arms was an old brick building with an elevator that shook between floors and hot water radiators that clicked whenever the boiler came on. I knew the normal sounds. The bathroom pipes tapping after somebody showered, the elevator humming before it stopped, the television through the wall from 3A. So I knew what normal sounded like. That first night, nobody complained or apologized. After a minute, the usual building noises returned, and I went back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same scrape, same 3 impacts. I grabbed my phone and recorded it. The recording was mostly radiator noise and my own breathing, but the scrape was there. It sounded farther away than it had in person. I emailed the building manager and asked whether somebody had been doing maintenance in 4B. He replied that 4B was vacant and that the building had some old ductwork. He said they'd look into it. That answer was reasonable. I work from home editing training videos, so I'm used to identifying bad audio. Ductwork can make strange sounds. And pipes or a boiler pump can make a noise seem as if it's coming from the ceiling. I wanted it to be one of those things. On the third night, I stayed awake until 3:17. The scrape came right on time. This time, it sounded like the object moved from the far side of the room toward the center. There was a pause, then 2 shorter scrapes, like somebody had adjusted their grip. After that, came the 3 impacts. I got out of bed and stood beneath the spot where the sound had stopped. I put my hand against the ceiling. It was useless, but I did it anyway. The tenant in 3A, Mara, said she'd heard knocking near her bathroom and thought it was the water line. Does it happen around 3? I asked. Sometimes, she said. She blamed the building getting quieter at night. She didn't laugh, but she didn't seem convinced either. The superintendent, Ray Bell, came up to 4B that afternoon. I watched him unlock the door with a large ring of keys. He knocked first,
even though there was no reason to.
The apartment was empty, in the way a place looks after someone has been gone for years. There was a radiator, a thermostat set to low heat, a ceiling light, and bare floorboards with dust gathered along the edges. The kitchen had no appliances, and the water line under the sink was capped. Ray said the unit still had power because they needed to keep the heat on and prevent damage during winter. He pointed out that a duct probably ran across the ceiling above my bedroom. When air pressure changed, the metal could flex and make a sound that carried through the floor. I asked if ductwork could sound like something being dragged. He shrugged. Old buildings are creative. Before he left, I noticed a narrow, clean line through the dust beneath the bedroom window. It ran about 4 feet across the floor and stopped before the wall. It looked like something heavy had been dragged over it. Ray said it was probably an old furniture mark, exposed when the room was cleaned. I took a picture anyway.
That night, I waited outside 4B. I sat on the hallway floor with my phone recording, feeling stupid and cold. At 3:17, the sound started inside the apartment. Not above me, inside 4B. I heard the long scrape through the door. There were no footsteps in the hallway. The elevator didn't move. The lock didn't turn. The door stayed completely still. Then came the 3 impacts. I put my ear against the door. The room on the other side was silent.
The next night, I put my phone on the floor beside my bed. I wanted a cleaner recording. At 3:17, the scrape began, and I could feel a faint vibration in the mattress. The sound crossed the ceiling and stopped directly above my bed. 3 impacts followed. After the third one, there was another knock. It came from inside my bedroom closet. It was quieter than the others, a small, close sound like somebody tapping once on the inside of the door. I opened the closet immediately. There was nothing there. I checked it twice. Nothing. I told myself the closet had shifted when the building vibrated. I told myself the sound had come through the wall. It really seemed close. The next morning, I listened to the recording with headphones. The ceiling impacts were obvious. The final knock was different. It was sharper, much closer to the phone. I could hear the little wooden click of it. I emailed management again and asked whether anyone had complained about 4B before. Ray found an old maintenance folder that afternoon. Most of it was routine. Then he stopped. The top page was a handwritten complaint from the tenant who had lived in my apartment 6 years earlier. It said, "Dragging again at 3:17. Please check the empty apartment above." The word "again" was underlined. I asked Ray what happened to the tenant. He said he didn't know. The man moved out a month or 2 later. "You remember the complaint?" I asked. Ray folded the paper in half. "People complain about noise all the time." That wasn't what I'd asked.
That night, I moved my bed into the living room. I didn't want to lie beneath that ceiling anymore. I left the bedroom door open because closing it made the apartment feel smaller. At 3:17, the scrape began above the empty bedroom. For a second, I felt relieved. The sound was still in the same place, and I was in the living room. And then it was tied to the room, not to me. Then the scrape changed direction. It traveled across the ceiling from the bedroom toward the living room. It stopped above the couch. 3 impacts followed. I was sitting on the floor with my back against the sofa. Then there was one final knock, directly above my head. The following night, Ray agreed to meet me in 4B. I left another phone recording in my apartment and went upstairs with him at 3:10. The room was still bare. Dust, radiator, 1 window, no furniture. At 3:17, the floor vibrated beneath my shoes. A long scrape began near the window. There was no object moving. I could see the entire room. The sound traveled across the floor anyway. Ray checked the radiator, then pressed his palm against the wall. The scrape continued, followed by 2 shorter movements. 3 impacts hit the floor beneath us. Then a 4th knock came from the wall beside the closet opening.
us, he said. We went downstairs and listened to the recording. It had captured the same scrape, but on the phone it sounded like it was coming from the ceiling of my bedroom. I asked Ray how that was possible. He said he didn't know.
Management changed the heating schedule, checked the rooftop equipment, shut off the water branch to 4B, and tested the boiler pump. For one night, nothing happened at 317. I thought it had stopped. The next night, the sound came back.
I started packing that morning. On my last night, the apartment was almost empty. The bedroom closet was still open. At 317, something dragged across the floor above me. The scrape was shorter this time. 3 impacts followed. Then the final knock came from inside the closet. I stood in the bedroom doorway until sunrise. I didn't open it.
A month after I moved, the manager forwarded me an email from the new tenant in 3B. He'd found my name on an old maintenance message and wanted to ask me something. He wrote, "Did the guy above you move a chair around at 317 every morning?" Not a dresser. A chair. I listened to my old recordings again with headphones on. The scrape was there. The 3 impacts were there. And after them, on the very first recording, I could hear the small wooden click from inside my closet. I'd assumed that sound came from the ceiling because everything else did. But it wasn't above me. It was close. Close enough that the phone had picked up the hinge. The new tenant said the scraping still happened at 317. He said it always stopped above his bed. Then he asked if I knew why somebody kept dragging a chair into position before the knocking started. I never answered him. I still have the recording. Sometimes I play it just to remind myself that I didn't imagine the whole thing. And every time I listen, I notice something different about that last sound. It doesn't sound like a knock on a closet door. It sounds like somebody on the other side of it, pulling the chair closer.